Evening, everybody. Scarpo, enjoying a beautiful evening. Sounds of family, sounds of life, sounds of breeze blowing through the trees, and all the little things that we sometimes overlook because we're so concerned with other things. But my question, I guess, today is I just wanted to make a short video and say that I wanted to address it towards Satori, which is an awakening, but I figure people would take that wrong because it's a, it's a culture-based idea, and it's also one that can't be described in words. But I just wanted to see what other folks' breakthrough was. When was the point where you never went back? Because that's what the Satori is. I made a video a while back about mini Satoris, which is kind of like an everyday awakening where you have a moment of clarity. It's usually, we call it an epiphany often, but that's a mistaken, identity for it. It's like, oh my God, and it comes in psychedelics a lot. And these little mini Satoris or awakenings or awarenesses, these are little things that change your life to where you're never quite the same. Something that changes your perspective permanently. And but there's one moment sometimes that will change your life completely, drastically. And some of us have many of them. I have a lot of stories, I've been through a lot of random things in my life, but it's been a pretty, uneventful as far as major events, but mental events are off the charts. I think that one of my biggest breakthroughs was when I was about, 12 years old. I read a book. We had the All About series. A lot of people had those if you grew up in the 70s and 80s. And they're called All About books. And they were all about everything, all about this, all about that. The one that I still have to this day was all about chemistry. And that's where I actually learned about phlogiston, which is what they believed was the burning substance, before they realized that it was oxygen and carbon and, that book was, I think, written in the 50s, 1950, I believe. And so it was pretty arcane, like we had some kind of come a long way even then, since that time. But the book was talking about atoms, and it had these little illustrations where it would show these little 50s type cartoon caricatures and what atoms would look like and stuff like that. And they said that most of atoms are just, empty space, and that basically everything's empty space. And that book changed my life. To this day, when I'm walking down the sidewalk, I'll look down and just think of the concrete as just a bunch of bonded energy packets. So I was about 12 years old, and that's what set me off on my journey, I guess. And I'd always been curious before then, but that's one moment I really remember vividly, was when I read that. I was like, wow. And there have been other books, too. Some of them haven't been books, some of them have been moments, just certain things that click in your head. One was a mushroom trip, when I saw the whole world illusion fall away. It was when I took 5 grams of mushrooms and watched all the walls fall away around the illusion that we call society, the illusion that we call government. And I could see all at once, in just a moment, just a glimpse of all of that, all of those walls falling away, and all of those separate people realizing that every one of those people go home to their families too. And so much of our anger goes towards people for making mistakes, because so many people make mistakes that don't coincide with the beliefs that we hold. But in their minds, they're doing the right thing. I mean, war is a good example, A lot of folks support war because they think that's what we need in order to be, defend ourselves or to gain what we need. But it's not because the people do it evilly. It's the epiphany I had was that, everyone who takes action, a majority of action that's taken, is not intended to harm. It's only intended to preserve the individual or his family, and it's not always done right. Say when politicians pass a law that a lot of people disagree with, there's always going to be a lot of people that still agree with it, obviously, but there's always going to be half the people who disagree with it strongly. And legal issues have always been a thing to me that just blew me away, because we have laws that are put into society, and I've really thought this over a lot. You know, we have people saying we shouldn't be told what we can and can't do, and we need more freedoms, we need more of this, more of that, but we forget that laws are put into effect usually to preserve our way of life. And as much as we like to argue against the system does this, the system does that, we are the system. So it's not the folks in charge that necessarily take the blame always. I mean, sure, there are those in the upper groups who are out for their own gain and to perhaps harm others. I don't see them as wanting to literally harm people as much as just to take what they think they deserve, you know. And it's an issue. It's an issue we have to contend with, to realize that. And this is the thing. Like when I discuss chemtrails with people, I say, so you're telling me that there's tens of thousands of people involved in these plots to fly planes all around the country and spray chemicals in the sky, and none of these people are thinking about their families on the ground, you know. And those are the angles I have to consider. You know, sure, a few people are crazy, a few people would be willing to sacrifice their families and friends for some kind of population reduction, but a majority of the people could not be involved in such a conspiracy because most people have good hearts. At least that's my view. Could be totally wrong, because I'm going from my eyeballs, my brain. This is what I see, what I feel. I feel that people are inherently good, and that we tend to strike out at ideas that don't coincide with how we think the world should be run. And that was my Satori, that was my realization that time on mushrooms, was that each person really has good intention. Majority of people, there's never 100%. Most people just think what they're doing is right, and that leads me to, you know, back up my thought that, you know, most of what we call evil is ignorance. Now, I'm still not going to say evil does or doesn't exist. I've said in the past evil doesn't exist, and there's a possibility, I believe, that there may be forces that feed on the negative. So that's what we would deem evil, so I guess evil does exist in some sense, but I don't see it as being a separate force. I see it as another angle of the almighty greatness that we call the universe. Yeah, it's a very complicated issue, and it's a really hard one to express. So that's the best I can do. Peace.